How on earth could someone trade a country like Canada for Northern Cyprus? What could possibly make anyone to leave the land of dream for a tiny island that majority of people haven't even heard of? If you are curious to hear the real unfiltered story behind both scenes, please watch this video until the end. You just might find yourself questioning everything that you thought you knew. My name is Maria, and today I'm going to tell you and explain you the reasons why I've left Canada and what made me choose Northern Cyprus as a permanent place for life. Canada has always been a dream place for me for a permanent stay. And in 2019, I managed to get to Canada with the means to relocate and actually to acquire a business and start afresh. So in February 2019, I landed, and in 2022, I've taken a serious decision to leave the country. And let me tell you the reasons and a little bit of my experience of why I've chosen to leave country and relocate to a new place and how I found Northern Cyprus. Let me give you a brief explanation. In Canada, I owned the business. It was a doggy daycare, and I owned the business for 3 years. It was an amazing experience. I've met so many great people. Generally, Canada is an amazing place itself, but there are a few things that we need to consider if we think as a permanent place for life. Let me talk about the positive sides of Canada first, because positives always comes with negatives, right? And it's always a matter of priority when you choose your permanent place for life. So Canada is an amazing country. It's a dream country for a lot of people, and that country is full of immigrants, and I would say that it's a first ranking system where people aim to immigrate to. So that was my case scenario as well. So when I got to Canada, what amazed me the most, it was the cleanest environment and recycling themes. You would not find any sort of paper outside on the streets. It's amazingly beautiful. There is a lot of nature. There is a lot of space, a lot of places to see. Most of all, of course, people are very helpful as well. I've met tremendous amount of incredible people while I was running the business. Everyone was helpful. Everyone was there for me, and I have nothing but good things to say about it. Of course, like in any European country and Western country, Canada has a lot of freedom for speech. You can practically say everything and anything you want outside on the streets. Any sort of opinion is accepted, and you can position yourself the way you want to. Okay? It is a beautiful side of it, but at the same time, it has a little bit of negative impact as well. But I'm gonna talk about a little bit later. Another very strong reason that country is very good is that there is a very strong government protection for vulnerable people. And I'm talking about people, first of all, that are homeless. They are always provided with the shelters and the pocket money. I'm talking about of people that are refugees. They get a lot of support and help from the government. As well as that, indigenous people, they've got a lot of benefits because their country was taken over, and basically they're even entitled to tax-free system, they get free housing, etc. And most importantly, Canada takes very good care of their children, in the sense that if the kid is being abused at home, or for some reason the kid wants to leave the family, the government provides full support, including education, accommodation, pocket money, the employment, help with the employment, and actually career pathways, right? So they consult with the private psychologists and things like that. So that's one of the most amazing things that I found about Canada, that vulnerable people are very protected. I would say that those points are the strongest ones. Of course, there is a lot of opportunities in terms of money making, but I would say because of the heavy taxation, and I'm talking about 40% for strong professionals, with high qualifications, 40% of the income is going to be taxed by the government with no benefit allowance. Besides the fact that there are a lot of job opportunities, it's going to be heavily taxed. And I would say the only way of making decent money is that it's either you are some sort of plain type of engineer and your wages exceed 300,000 per year, or you are a business owner. That would be another way, much easier way of making money. And why that is because once you own the business, of course, you can always deduct the expenses. Let's touch base on the negative sides of Canada and what made me rethink my whole strategy about, positioning myself into a certain place. The first thing is the safety. Canada is not the place it used to be in terms of safety. When they say that there is no shooting outside, there is. Occasionally people get killed in the daylight for no reason at all whatsoever. And I do link this kind of occasions with the drug abuse, because another factor that made me change my opinion is the fact that drugs have been legalized. When we're talking about marijuana, it has been legalized for good as a treatment, and among population, this particular substance is taken as a treatment for a lot of diseases, right? And that's why it's not taken as a drug anymore, it's rather taken as a medicine. and that opinion spreads out across masses, right, including children. So that was a huge red flag for me, because if everyone smokes marijuana around, my son would probably do that as well, right, just to try it out, and God knows if he's going to stop. So that was a huge red flag for me that made me actually rethink. Aside of that, there were some other substances that were legalized as a trial for years in some of the provinces. That was another red flag for me. Another fact is that while the government helping vulnerable people is the strength of the country, sometimes it kills the motivation to contribute to the society and, strive for a better life. Hence why I think a lot of people who have the pocket money and they're not required to work anymore, they end up, again, abuse substances and just do nothing with their lives. And of course, because they have nothing to do, they walk around on the streets and they spoil life for others, because, abusing substances doesn't lead us to the healthy mentality. It leads us to a bad mentality. And the consequences, you just can't think of it, because I was in shock when I entered Toronto one day before I left the country. And I didn't feel safe during the daytime. Let me just tell you, and let me finish it on here. I'm pretty sure people would understand what I'm saying. Oh my goodness, very expensive cost of living. When we're talking about money making, that's one. When you hear that you can make up to 100K per year and you think it's a big amount, less the taxation, 40%, you ended up with 60. But then cost of living is tremendous. When I'm telling people that I've paid $4,000 Canadian dollars for my first car insurance, one-sided coverage, for the car that cost me $7,000, people don't believe me, but I do have the proof. I'm not saying that everybody pays that sort of money. Of course, I was the new immigrant, and of course, it was the first year of me driving in Canada, and that's why the insurance was so high. But then, the following year, I paid $3,500, and then it could have possibly been reduced to like a couple of thousands per year, but still, it's a hefty expense, right? Or let's say, let me give you another example. My distant relative owns a house, and the council tax is, for a regular house outside of Toronto, is about $500 per month. Rent is about $2,000, $2,500 per month. And it's not something very exciting. It's a very simple place. If you think of the maintenance fee for a condo, you would expect to pay something anywhere from $600 to $700 per month as well, if that condo includes swimming pool and the gym. So you just imagine how much money you would need to make to cover the living expenses. So people find themselves having 2 to 3 jobs, even working as professionals, to make up to a decent level of life. And once you have to work 2, 3 jobs, you just imagine that life and work balance, they're not the greatest, right? And that was another big reason for me, because as a business owner of a doggy hotel, I found myself being at work from 6 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. I had no days off. I had no vacations. I couldn't leave the place because, I was highly responsible for the doggies. So I found myself in a position where I could actually make the income. I can make the living. I can make a really good income. But at the same time, I don't have the time to spend that money because I don't get out of the business premises. And of course, when I'm talking about the expenses and I'm about to talk about the housing prices, I don't refer to the whole of Canada. I refer particularly to Toronto area, the Ontario, right? If you go to the north, to the provinces like Saskatchewan, Alberta, or Calgary, of course, housing is going to be a lot cheaper. The insurance is going to be cheaper. The council tax is going to be cheaper. But then you find yourself in a very winter harsh type of conditions, right? And when we talk about opportunities in terms of professional work or opening up a business, they are very limited because majority of the industries that are located within the northern territories, they are linked to manufacturing, mining, things like that, or farming. It's down to impossible to get a house in Toronto nowadays. I mean, you would expect to pay at least $2 million Canadian dollars for semi-detached regular house outside of Toronto. So that's a lot of money to spend. And I was questioning myself if I would ever be able to buy one for myself. Another biggest red flag for me was, again, I'm going back to freedom, because freedom is great, democracy is great, hands up, I'm for it. But at the same time, when there is too much freedom, where people can identify themselves as a cat, for example, or where minors can actually change their gender without getting permission from their parents and without even understanding the consequences of such change. And because it becomes a normality within a society, it scared me a lot. Another is a good one. I haven't experienced it myself, but I've heard a lot of stories from friends of mine. When employment is based on orientation rather than qualification. Again, I'm not going to break it down. I'm pretty sure that people who watch this video, they will understand what I'm saying. I actually learned a new word in Canada, and that word is anxiety. Because of my business, I had a lot of young employees, and words like anxiety and depression became a vocabulary that I used to hear every single day. And again, that's very concerning to me because among young generation, anxiety is something that's very common. And we do know that, like, let's say within my mentality, within my upbringing, and at the age when I was at their age, at the age of 20, I didn't know that that term existed, not even the word itself. So that's another factor for me that made me think how my son is going to position themselves if he's going to hear that a lot, and that he will have the excuses to escape job, to escape work, to escape, classes, just because he has an anxiety attack, when there is no obvious reasons for that. Basically, all in all, considering all of those factors, I've realized that I would probably not feel comfortable living in such a place, and I would probably look for something better that fits my requirements and needs a lot more. And that's the moment I've decided to leave Canada and look elsewhere to relocate. Of course, I had a list of criteria that I was looking for when I was looking for a new place, and we've considered tons of locations, right, to relocate to. But the main things that I was looking for in a new place that I wanted to make as a permanent home, first of all, things that come into my mind, it surrounds my son, right? I've got a 12-year-old son. One of the most important factors for me was the presence of a British education, right? Private schooling, because I wanted my son to be fluent in English. The second criteria that I was looking for, of course, is the safety. I didn't want no homeless people around. I didn't want no drug presence or people being under influence around outside on the streets. I definitely didn't want that sort of freedom where you can position yourself as a cat or change your gender. But again, I wanted some freedom, of course. Yeah, countries like North Korea or China would definitely not be for me. Oh, after Canada, one of the biggest factors was easy residency. Oh my goodness, yes, it took me 2 years to get to Canada. 2 years I was preparing documentation, right? 2 years. So with the place that I was choosing, I wanted a very simple, straightforward process that it's not going to take months or years. I wanted to be very quick and straightforward with a minimal amount of documents. Definitely lower cost of living. I wanted to come and buy my own accommodation. I wanted to come and buy my own car. I wanted to pay a decent amount insurance, right? Not worth half of my car, but something less. And of course, I wanted sun all year round, and I wanted sea being next to me. That was my dream destination. So what places did we consider with my husband? We did think of Asia, places like Thailand or Bali. No, due to cultural differences, we decided it's not the place to be. Of course, we thought about Europe, but again, Europe has pretty much the same positives and negatives that Canada would have. And due to the political situation right now across the globe, it's probably not the best place for my nationality. So we were looking for something like Europe, but with lesser control, with lesser freedom, but enough freedom so we can feel comfortable around. Where English is widely spoken, as I said, British education, safety, nice climate, easy residency. And that's when the choice dropped on Northern Cyprus as the perfect place to be. Northern Cyprus has ticked all the boxes, and let me tell you in details why. When we came across videos about Northern Cyprus on YouTube, the first thing that I was hearing, that mentality is very European. Is it true? Yes, it is. You really think, like, first of all, architectural wise and nature wise, you would think that you're somewhere in Europe. English is widely spoken. The amount of Europeans you see in here is tremendous. It's a multinational country. Another pro-European thing is that Northern Cyprus follows common British law system. English is widely spoken. There is huge amount of UK nationals. There is a tremendous amount of repatriates because UK and Northern Cyprus are very closely linked due to history. And it's definitely a place that respects personal boundaries. There are gay parades over here in Northern Cyprus, but at the same time, there is no pressure being put with confusion on kids at school. And at the same time, of course, country remains apolitical and value neutral to any other nationality. So since Northern Cyprus, according to what we've seen on the media, has ticked all the boxes, we've decided to come over here and try it out. And let me tell you this, the first month that we arrived, at the end of the month, when I actually had a little bit of rest after Canada, I fell in love with the island. I fell in love with people, with nature, with absolutely amazing seafront, with the beautiful mountains, with climate itself, right? So it took me a month to fall in love with it. And I've actually made a decision that my kid is going to attend school in here. So my son went to school on the second month of us being here in September. And within the 3 months, I already bought my first house. And as a mother of a 12 years old boy, all I can tell you is that I could not think of better place for upbringing my son, for his process in education, for his mental health, his intellectual development, meet different cultures, learn at the same time 3 different languages, and be just a kid outside on the streets in absolute safety environment without mommy being concerned. I'm very honest about the fact that safety is very unconditional here. It's extremely safe for kids to stay outside because I would say that it's the most precious things for locals. And it doesn't matter whether that kid is local or whether it's expat kid, right? It doesn't matter. Kids are cherished, they are looked after. And a lot of the times, if kid is getting lost, it doesn't take no time for parents to find him because people don't leave kids unattended. If they see that the kid is browsing around alone, somebody's going to approach that kid and going to solve the issue. School is just outstanding, period. Over 3 years that I've been in here, we had 3 class teachers, Miss Yumit, Mustafa, and now it's Miss Suel. I can't say how grateful I am to those 3 people. Their attention, dedication, and involvement into my son's academic and emotional development are incredible. People are very happy and very approachable, whether they are locals or expats. You know, things like abuse or discrimination or any sort of little crime that you could see anywhere else in the world have 0 tolerance to. Even if you yell at someone, you get your first and the last warning. On the second time, you get deported. And it's actually amazing. It's actually truly beautiful because people don't yell, people don't swear, people don't argue outside on the streets. People are being very respectful. Whether it's for that reason, whether it's for the reason of 0 tolerance policy, whether it's something else, I don't know, but that's how it is. In conclusion, I would like to say that Northern Cyprus, in my opinion, at least, is one of the best, if not the best, places on earth for upbringing your kids. However, there are a few things to consider if you are looking to relocate to the island. Well, first of all, it's not that easy to get a well-paid job because majority of good jobs are taken by the locals, and it requires Turkish language being spoken, okay? So I wouldn't rely on getting a job over here. I would rather rely on something like remote work. Crypto enthusiasts feel themselves very comfortable over here, that's for sure. If you have the business somewhere overseas or you have a remote type of business, that would be a perfect case scenario as well. But yeah, setting up a business in Northern Cyprus is a bit challenging as well. I don't say that people don't succeed. I mean, there are successful cases over here, but there is too much bureaucracy over here and people find themselves very in difficult position when they start up a new business, and not everybody has the funds and the energy to keep on fighting to make it work. So you would really need to think twice if you want to set up a business over here. But if it's a remote paid job, if ideally, if you make money overseas and you get paid in a European type of currency, you would feel yourself like a king in here. Pensioners is another category of people that come here and just enjoy their life because they're set up with pension. The cost of life is a lot less than in Europe comparing to Europe, but at the same time you have all year round summer with a very nice climate, mild climate, absolutely beautiful sun and amazing sea. And I would say the last thing that I would like to add, if you like natural village type of life, rather than cosmopolitan type of cities, Northern Cyprus would be an ideal place for you. Let's compare. If I wanted to buy 2-bedroom apartment in a condominium that has a swimming pool, a gym, and sauna in Canada, I would look at about $800,000, right? The same type of apartment in all-inclusive resort where you can find kids clubs, indoor pools, gym, saunas, restaurants, majority of outdoor pools, and you will be positioned next to the seafront within a walking distance of 3 minutes. You would expect to pay roughly 130,000 USD. If you'd like to receive a catalog with the properties around that price range, please drop me a message. If you'd like to hear my full story in Canada, my experience over 3 years of running a business, how I ended up getting the business, how I set it up, what difficulties I faced, and how I nearly got scammed a few times, please leave a comment below and I will shoot a full detailed video of my personal experience. By the way, I do read every single comment that you leave, ladies and gentlemen, and of course I reply myself to each one of them. Don't hesitate, drop me a comment below.